Hi, I'm Rick Miller, and I'm the author of Be Chief. It's a choice, not a title. It's a book where you're going to learn about what you need to do to have more power. Do you want more energy? Do you want more confidence? Do you want more clarity? To get more impact and more influence? This is a session you need to listen to. By the way, if you're running a business, the tips we're going to talk about today have consistently tripled the growth rate of million and billion-dollar businesses. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, profit in your business, in your life, and in your leadership impact. Today, we're going to be taking an insider look at being the chief and redefining the distribution of power. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any of our past episodes on our Facebook community page. Just go look for Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast inside Facebook. You'll find us there. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Lancaster, Philadelphia, all the way to Colorado Springs. Also look for us on Roku TV, where we have over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 million listeners for every episode. We are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. Okay. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Strap yourself in. We're about to dive right in. Let's do that. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, a leader in any capacity, you know that the power positions have changed. You may have been climbing that corporate ladder. You may or may not have gotten that promotion you wanted, expected, or even believed that you deserved. You see, conventional wisdom has long defined chiefs as rulers of people, those at the top of the organizational chart, who hold on to the most power and hold it pretty tight. We've always viewed chiefs as special, selectively chosen to lead others. The perceptions in business and society is that only those at the top have the power to be a chief. But the question is, do you need a title to be a chief? Well, stay tuned because you are about to find out. Our guest today is Rick Miller. He is an unconventional turnaround specialist, a servant leader, and a go-to chief. For over 30 years, Rick has been chief at startups and nonprofits. He has served as a successful business executive in roles including president and or CEO in a Fortune 10 and a Fortune 30, as well as going from a ground-up startup to a $21 billion company. He's also experienced and trusted confidant, an author, a sought-after speaker, an expert at driving sustainable growth. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome Mr. Rick Miller!
With that kind of introduction, Dov, I don't know where we're going to go, but it's incredible. But great to be with you.
It's time to go home now. We're done.
Sound effects as well. I love the sound effects.
Good, thank you. So your book is called Be Chief, right? So let's start there. Let's start with your definition of what you mean, because, you know, we all know the C-suite is the chief something officer. And I think that you define it, certainly that's part of it, but you define it a little differently. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do. The title of the book is Be Chief, and the subtitle is a choice, not a title. And yeah, when I get out of business school, Dov, a couple of years back, there were only two chiefs. There was a chief executive officer and a chief financial officer. There were a bunch of vice presidents running around, but there were only two chiefs, and everybody was trying to go up the corporate ladder. How do I get there? Right? How do I get there? And there back in the day, there was a view that only the people at the top had power. And that was defined as authority and control. I don't know anybody that really has control, but we'd like to believe that somebody.
Good luck with that, yeah.
Right, exactly. But that was the definition of what a chief was. Chief was the authoritative power, the person in the corner office, and that's the way it was for a long time. And I think today there's a different definition of where power comes from, and businesses are all trying to figure out how to unlock the power in all of their people. So some are throwing around chief titles, by the way. So the vice president title is out of vogue now. Now it's chief fill in the blank officer.
Yes.
And some organizations have, 20, 30, 40 chiefs. Some places they're all chiefs. But the goal of any business is still the same. How do you get the best out of our people and have them feel powerful? And that's what the book's about.
But it's interesting, something I'm noticing because, you and I are in the leadership world. We're constantly around those kinds of people, and I don't know about you, but for me, as that kind of person, I'm constantly looking at leadership and how it's done and how people are doing it. And one of the things that I find fascinating is, certainly in my last book, Fiercely Loyal, we talked about this whole thing around the distribution of power. But at the same time, and I said there that, if you're a dinosaur, you're going to hold on to power in the old form. But at the same time, we're also seeing the polarity. So we're seeing the distribution of power and the flattening of the hierarchy, and allowing people to have their power, as you said, companies with 20 and 30 chiefs. But it was also this backlash on the other side of that, which is the dictatorial leaders. Some of those are, I agree that some of them are in their late 60s and maybe even 70s, but they are holding on fierce and are really cracking that whip. What's your thought about that polar response?
Well, I think you're right. There are those that are holding on. The challenge is, are they retaining the best people at all levels? So again, if they've got something, they've got a patent, they've got a differential advantage in the market that allows them to succeed in spite of that dictatorial kind of power, then nothing lasts forever. And that you work with a lot of businesses and a lot of different sizes. The idea is probability, and the probability of success goes up, as you know, because you teach it, when you share power. And that's the answer. That's absolutely the answer. And you're right. There are those that are holding on to it now. The question is whether they're in their 60s or 70s, they're going to retire, and what's going to happen when they leave, and how many people will be able to move into positions of authority and power if they have not spread that power. I think those companies in the long term are in trouble.
And you just said something there, spreading the power, which I think is an important distinction, because one of the things that we see, we've seen it now a lot in family business, but we see it a lot in business, which is the problem with succession. And if you've had a dictatorial leader, what I often say, that leadership is by example. So if you've been a dictatorial leader, that's what you've taught that leadership is. And so now there's this conflict, because if you've got a millennial who is now already 38 years old, at the upper end, coming in, been modeled this dictatorial leadership, and at the same time feeling like I don't want that can often become a bit of a pull. And as you said, many of them will just say, you know what, I know it's a family business, but I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to pull away. So I think the potential for loss is enormous.
I agree. I think succession is a huge issue, and family businesses obviously are unique in that bloodline determines what's going to happen many times. But in the normal business, whether it's small or medium or large, a non-family business, succession is an issue. But in the market right now, Dov, you know that the real issue is speed. So the issue in any size organization, speed is the issue these days. You have to have good ideas, but a good idea, today is worth so much more than that same good idea a week, a month, or 6 months from now. It's about speed. So the opportunity to harness the good ideas of the people on the front line. And we talk these days about self-directed teams and being agile. Back in the day, we used to use term decentralization. Now that's a longer
Right.
term. Agile is only 2 syllables. Decentralization is a lot bigger term, but it says the same thing.
Sure.
Successful companies back in the day decentralized decision making. Now we call it different terms for it today, but it had to do with putting the decision making ability in the hands of people who had the most knowledge, and not giving them an ability to maybe make $1 billion purchase to acquire another company. I got it. But within a particular scope, let people who had the best information make those decisions quickly to benefit customers and benefit share owners. And that's something that is becoming more and more the norm. Granted, family businesses may be off to the side, but speed is still the issue.
Yeah, but I think you're right, though. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are family business or anything else. That agility, that speed is very, I mean, it's vital. It's not even very important. It's vital. But one of the things about this book, I want to talk about this book in a couple of ways as we get into it here. But one of the things about the book that I want everybody to know is the profits from the book not going into the Rick Miller holiday account. Tell us about that. And is your wife upset?
Well, I would tell you, when I started this journey now 10 years ago to start this book, and it only took me 10 years for multiple iterations to get it out, I knew there was going to be a charity partner along the way that would benefit. But I did make the decision prior to it being published in September that all author proceeds, 100%, not net of expenses, and
wow,
penny comes in, it's going to help kids with special needs. And there's a reason for that, Dov, and I was able to do a TED talk on this a little while back, where I talked about one of the biggest chiefs, one of the most powerful leaders that I ever met in my life, was a little 6-year-old girl who had cerebral palsy. Oh, and I worked with her in a 100-degree heated pool with a physical therapist, and learned. I call her Melissa. We have to protect her name, but I call her Melissa. Sure. And I told a story in the TED talk of, when I first met Melissa, she was sitting off to the side in her wheelchair, waiting her turn very patiently. But when she got in the pool, she was as focused and as hardworking as anybody I'd ever met. Yes, she was accepting of her situation, but she was a fighter, Dov. She was a fighter. At the same time, she was gracious. She was grateful. She always said thank you to the physical therapist and me. She was very generous with her smile. She had a spirit about her. And I can tell you that she impacted everyone around her, right? So that kind of power that I learned from a 6-year-old girl with cerebral palsy is the kind of the root of the book, because everyone has power defined as energy and clarity and influence and impact. Everyone can have those things. And it's really in her honor that I decided to donate all author proceeds to help other teachers like Melissa who have special needs.
That is awesome. That's really beautiful. Would you mind telling us how you became involved in that? That's, because you talked about being in a hot pool with her.
Yeah, well, that was 100 degrees.
Right. That's pretty hot.
It was warm. It was warm. But I've had a history of doing things with kids. I started a nonprofit maybe 15 years ago, ran it as CEO to help other nonprofits. In that particular area, it was to help kids with diabetes. I happen to be a type 1 diabetic myself. Right. And I just find that, when you're working with kids, Dov, you think you go there to teach, but invariably you learn. You think you're there to give, and you're receiving. So I think it's with everybody else. So I've got a real affinity for kids, and whether it's kids with diabetes, kids with cancer, kids with any kind of special needs, I think they are gifts to us. And it was my choice for that period of time to spend some time in a pool, and I learned an awful lot.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, we've touched on this, and I just want to dive a bit deeper into it. Why do you believe conventional wisdom about chiefs is just all wrong?
Well, I think you look at the surveys that are out there, and you're very familiar with these, but your audience might not be. Worldwide, organizations like Gallup surveys say that up to 85% of employees, of workers, are not fully engaged. I say they're not bringing their A game. So why aren't they bringing their A game? Well, they're not bringing their A game because they feel powerless, right? They feel like they don't have the ability to make decisions. Nobody trusts their judgment. Bureaucracy, all the things that just slow people down. So again, I'm not a life coach, I'm a business coach, but invariably when I go to work with startups all the way to multinationals, that's one of the things we have to unlock. How can we create an organization where everyone feels powerful? And the old thinking was that power, we talked about earlier in the show, came from the corner office, rather than understanding that power comes from anyone who has clarity, energy, and confidence. And if you have clarity, energy, and confidence, you have influence and you can make an impact.
So let's, can we break those three up for a minute?
Sure.
So where do you start? Do you start in clarity?
Start wherever you want. I think there's 5 areas that we need to touch on to truly be powerful.
Okay, so let's
start
go
wherever you want.
You start where you feel is best for our listeners, so they really get, like, you know, because I think, as you said, I think that people do feel powerless, and particularly, as I said in the introduction, when they feel like they've been sort of, the light has shone over them in a promotion or whatever it is, that can feel powerless. And I understand it. I don't know that it's true, but I definitely get it. So, and I know that your book is very much about empowering people in these positions. So just walk us through it in whatever order you feel is appropriate.
Well, it's about choice, Dov. It's all about choice. And so if you're on the front line and you don't have anybody reporting to you, or you're an entrepreneur and you've got a company of one and nobody reports to you because that's your business, there's one of you, right? You can't delegate because it's you, right?
Right.
That's it. So how do you bring out your best? And the point I make in the book is that it's all about who you are. You have to first understand who you are, so you're making choices that are consistent. Because, you know, what's best for Dov is not best for Rick, potentially, right?
Sure.
So the first 2 elements of the 5 have to do with self-understanding. The first one is about values, right? It's all about, what are your values? Now, you could stand for a lot of things. There's a lot of wonderful things in the world. But I asked people to make choices in the book about what are those 4 values. I picked 4 because of the compass idea. You know, you get a direction from compass. So north, south, east, west. What are the 4 things that you stand for? And you have to think about that a little bit. And I believe, Dov, that once you determine where you stand, you can take one. And when you take a stand, you become powerful. Now, for me, my 4 north, south, east, west, I've determined are truth, service, equality, and connection. Doesn't mean that's better or worse than anybody else's, but I know those are my 4 points of my compass. So I make decisions based on that, and it helps me make decisions based on who I am. That's the values is one. The second part of that is insight or self-understanding. How do you build better self-understanding, right? You have so many voices all around you, a well-intentioned spouse, other relatives, kids. And by the way, the media is wonderful at constantly chirping at you what you should be thinking, what you should be doing. How do you develop that voice, your own voice, so that in a pinch, you listen to your own voice rather than all the stuff chirping at you?
Rather than the noise.
There are 5 ways to do that. I think as we learn to be more present, more accepting, more generous, more grateful, and determined that we have to find some time to be still amongst all the stuff going around us. All 5 of those practices can help us develop a better understanding of ourselves and our own voice. So it starts with, if being a chief is connecting what you do to who you are, it starts with, who am I? And I'm different than you are. You're different than all your audience members. But it starts there with values and insight. So once we have that, you can work with the other 3, right? The other 3 have everything to do with discipline, right? So discipline doesn't guarantee things, but increases the probability of things happening, right? You can't control anything, but with a little bit more discipline, you can increase the probability of success, right? It has everything to do with clarity. Influence comes from supporting other people, right? You want more influence? Support other people.
Support more people, yeah.
That's the key. That's the key. And if you really want to have an impact, the 5th element is creativity, right? So when you are truly creative, when you're aligning how you create. Now, when I say creativity, I'm not talking about innovation. I'm talking about the ability to manifest the future. So there's 2 types of creativity I talk about in the book. One is internal creativity, how I think and how I feel. And then there's the external creativity about how I speak, how I write, and how I act. And so if I'm trying to have an impact in the world, once I understand who I am, right, supporting other people and with discipline, when I am fully creative and I'm lining up those 5 creative choices, and I'm lining up how I feel, I think, I speak, I write, and act, then, Dov, I am truly powerful. And it's got nothing to do with my title.
No,
It's
exactly.
choices that I'm making that are consistent with me understanding who I am. So those are the five. Insight, values, who am I? And then what do I do with it with discipline? What do I do with it with supporting other people and with true creativity?
Yeah,
That's it.
that's great. And I know you outlined that very well in the book. And one of the pieces I want to come back to, that there's two pieces actually I really want to sort of hone in on for a minute. And one of those is, the insight into self. And I think that one of the things, because that's the work that I do, one of the things that I see so often is that leaders don't take that seriously. They see that as soft skills, woo-woo, or whatever term they want to use for it. And what we don't realize is, coming back to what you just said about impact, is, again, leadership is by example. And so if you don't know you, and by the way, as you listen to this, as you watch us, saying, well, I know myself, that's what everybody says. That doesn't mean you know a damn thing. So you really got to get to know you. And you got to know, one of the things, like a simple recommendation I give to anybody, even before I start working on them, is I say, just for 1 week, I want you to track what pisses you off. Like, just track what irritates you. Whether it's people on the road, the way they drive, whether it's somebody, the way they walk in a mall. Like, what is it that irritates you? And then ask, once you've got a list of all the things that irritate you, little or large, then ask yourself, what is it about me? Just ask that simple question, because that'll give you such self-awareness. And people go, really? Yeah, honestly. Because I remember I would walk through malls. I don't go to malls anymore, but back in the day of malls, I would walk through malls and I wanted to kick people. I could feel the urge in me to kick people who would walk in front of me and then stop. Like, what are you doing? Or they would meander. And I went, okay, so this is now driving me crazy. So this is me. What is this? And what it was like, well, I'm really irritated by these people, don't know where they're going. They're unfocused. They're all over the show. And I went, ooh, I wonder where I'm like that. And I was like, okay, I am clearly all over the place. Haven't decided. In the mall, I know exactly where I'm going. But in my life, I have to look at that. In my business, I have to look at that. And so it was like that moment of that self-awareness. Because and the reason I want to bring that up first is because something that Rick said there that's so important for you to get is when we do values work with people, and I'm sure you know this better than anybody, Rick, you do values work with people, people pull values out of a hat like they're pulling rabbits out of a hat at a magician's conference. Oh, well, this should be the right one. This, this is no. If you don't know you don't know your values. You're just going to say the shit you think is correct because the other guy said it. Rick Miller said it. Oh, that must be the right. No, because as you said, Rick, I'm different than you. You're different than me, and everybody's got their own. And without that self-knowledge, without that self-inquiry, the values we have are not going to stick. And it's really interesting because I love this. One of the titles of your chapters was Values and Fish Sticks. So tell us a little bit about that, why you chose that.
That was one of the early lessons. I grew up relatively lower middle class. I wouldn't say we were dirt poor, but Dad did not make a lot of money working in the personnel area, and maybe bad luck, but he was fired a couple times, and we went periods of time without much money. And unfortunately, my mom was hospitalized most of my time growing up. So it was a single dad doing his best to raise 3 boys. And we knew when things were tough. Dad didn't talk a lot about money, but we knew, the 3 boys knew things were tough when on not consecutive nights, but for weeks, we would be fed one dinner, inexpensive breaded fish sticks, which if you haven't had a fish stick before, think about the smallest amount of fish you could possibly consider and just load it with bread and then douse it with ketchup and maybe you could get it down. But it took very little time to prepare. Dad just thought that was dinner. So the boys knew when things were tough, we were eating fish sticks. So fast forward to my undergraduate experience at Bentley University in Massachusetts. And I wanted to be a big deal in business, right? I went to business school because we didn't make a lot of money and I wanted to make some money. I didn't want to go to personnel, so I figured we'd try something else, maybe get one of those chief titles someday, right?
Right.
And so I'm in my first marketing class, and a sales professional came in who was an adjunct professor, And he said to my accounting peers, I went primarily to an accounting school, and said, you know, the best thing you guys can do to be a big deal in business is to go on commission. He said, most of you will graduate and you'll go behind a desk and you'll become an auditor, an accountant. He said, that's not a bad thing, but you'll never be in charge. This was his view. Okay, he's a sales professional.
Sure.
If you really want to know about business, it's about customers and competition. So many of you won't do it. He was challenging us. But if you really want to be a big deal in business, he said, you'll go on sales and you'll go on commission-based sales, so that if you don't sell, you won't get paid. That will be a motivator. And I sat there in class thinking to myself, wait a minute, I want to be a big deal in business, but if I don't sell, I could force myself to eat fish sticks. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
The trauma of fish sticks, I couldn't get my ass.
I wanted a set paycheck because I never had one growing up, but I had to face the fear. And so, yeah, the values was all about, okay, the values that my dad taught me were all about taking care of people, but trusting that if you did your work, that you would have some help along the way. So I trusted those values, and I went for the job in sales, and let's just say it worked out okay.
But the point about it is, you know, we have to, I mean, being a chief means you put yourself in a position where you test the values.
You test your values and you face fear, right? You face fear. Everyone is uncomfortable, right? Everyone is uncomfortable.
Everybody, you know, everybody's got great values until they're pushed against the wall.
Right, right. Well, I guess it was a famous boxer who said strategy is great till you get hit in the mouth.
Exactly. Right? Once you get punched in the face, everything goes out of the window.
Right.
Right. And as a leader, as a chief in business, you're going to get punched in the face a lot. And you better know what stabilizes you is those values. And again, you're not going to get to those unless you know yourself and you do the self-inquiry to really get there.
Right. And there's 2 points about the values I think that we should make. Number one is, yeah, you're going to get hit in the mouth. Got that 100%. And I used to use the analogy of roadmaps, Bill. I used to say, you know, you have to figure out which road is going to get you from point A to B. You could take the expressway, you could take the scenic route, but you have to figure out which road. Now, interestingly today, people want to go where there has been, I mean, if you're going to a destination that has a road to it, that means somebody has been there before. What if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea to do something that's never been done before? There's no road laid.
No.
So that's why I've kind of shifted my language towards a compass. And a compass, I need to go northwest. But by the way, there's no road that goes there. So if I'm following my values or you're following your values, I mean, you've gone places that nobody has gone before in your career, right? I know your career. You've done things that others haven't done. I've done things that others haven't done.
Absolutely.
But our some would call it our North Star or our compass. The thing that we look to for direction to go where we want to go is our values, and those shouldn't change.
You know, and talking of these things, talking of taking risks and testing the values in the field, you spent some time in Iraq. Is that correct?
I did, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and how that influenced you as a chief. Because I can't imagine that being there even for 10 minutes would not have impact on the way that we lead.
No, it had an impact. The reason I was there is at the time I was president of a government unit that was responsible for building out the wireless technology that formed the backbone of the public safety network that was in place that allowed people to hold up their purple thumbs in 2005 and vote for the first time in the country's history. The wireless network, the public safety network, was the backbone of how people got to vote for the first time in 2005. I was in Iraq to work with not only my customer, which was the US DOD, but the Iraq Minister of the Interior, who was my customer as well, because all the infrastructure that we put in place was going to be transitioned from the US to the Iraqis post the war. So I was there to do that. What was very clear to me, and the story I tell in the book, was that when I arrived at Baghdad airport, while I had the chief title, there was a group of security detail charged with getting me, which was at the time the most dangerous road in the world, you know, from the airport to the green zone, where there was explosions every day and people were losing their lives. It was very clear to me that the chief title that I had meant absolutely nothing. And the good news was every member of my security detail viewed themselves to be chief, viewed themselves to have the power to make real-time decisions. And I just went along for the ride, said, guys, forget everything aside. I'll do whatever you tell me, whenever you tell me, and as quickly as you tell me. Because in that case, it was a clear example that the people who knew best were the people who were in Iraq for a reason, which was to provide security to me. And it was a learning experience as we were successful in our mission. But it was a clear indicator as well that titles don't matter much.
Yeah, I remember reading that and thinking that was a really powerful. I mean, it was a real thing, but it was a metaphor too. It was a real powerful understanding, because it's one thing to, oh, that's a great concept, but it's very different when you're, quite literally boots on the ground and realizing, you know what, this title, this don't make you bulletproof, buddy. But that guy over there who is earning considerably less than I am, who is a Midwest boy who has never, done any, he's actually the boss of my life right now. That is pretty profound and insightful, right? I mean, and I think, one of the things I say to companies that I'll work with, I say, can I give you something as a bonus? And they'll say, sure. And I go, I want to go meet your receptionist. And they go, what do you mean? I said, I want to meet your receptionist. I'm going to meet your receptionist on the phone first. I'm going to meet them in person before I ever come in. Before you ever know I'm there, is that okay? And they go, yeah. And I go, because I want to find out if your CRO, which is what I talked about in my book, your chief relationship officer is actually doing the job. Because your life depends on that. And the example I give all the time is, if you pick up the phone and you call Dove Baron International, my company, or Authentic Paragon Alliance, my other company, and you call, and the person who picks up the phone is in a bad mood, you don't think that person's in a bad mood. You think, I'm an asshole, or our company are rude. Right? You don't think about it as a person.
Exactly right.
And that guy, in charge of your security, standing there with his rifle or whatever it is way more important than you. In that moment, you get it. Right. And I just thought it was a great example. I really loved that, that landing there and seeing that guy in his Rambo outfit. I thought, oh, that's a really great way of putting it.
Well, and again, it's what you practice at your companies and what I practice where I go as well, which is understanding that everybody matters. Now, the book is full of the research behind how through viral engagement, I make the point that anyone influences everyone in an organization. You might not understand that. We talk about the research and what backs that all up, but it comes to the Iraq story is don't underestimate anyone because their impact can be huge.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. What is, I feel like we've touched on it, but maybe I think you've got places we can dive a little deeper, which is how can our listeners, our viewers become more powerful in themselves in what it is they do? If you were sort of saying, this is what you need to do to become more powerful, to own your power, I guess would be a better way of saying it.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a real pragmatic answer, okay?
Thank you.
And make no mistake about it. I would love every member of your audience to buy books because it's going to special needs kids, okay?
Yeah, that's fabulous.
But on my website at beingchief.com, every one of your listeners for free, can take a power assessment and get a score, because the language of business is numbers, right?
Yes.
So if you're gonna focus on it, you want to measure it. So take you 3 minutes, all of 3 minutes, to fill out on your smartphone. What would your score be for energy and confidence and clarity and influence and impact? Add that up, you get a power score. And importantly, that's a baseline. Your baseline is your baseline. I don't really care what the score is. The issue is you'll be made aware of choices that you're making, either consciously or unconsciously, because you haven't thought about it, like we talked about our values. You'll be aware of the choices that you're making that either add to or detract from your power. And so very pragmatically, someone can spend 3 minutes and say, you know what is my power score? And then where would I choose to focus on my choices? And then you'll get some free information that says, hey, look at making a slight tweak here or a slight tweak there if you're not happy. By the way, if you're happy with it, the way things are going, things are moving quite the way you want them to, fantastic. Then this could be helpful maybe to somebody else that you know. So spread the news. But it's free and it's powerful. And that's what this is all about.
And by the way, listener, viewer, I just want you to know that I have done it. It is just as quick as Rick says. I mean, you can contemplate it and take a little bit longer, but 3 to 5 minutes, you're done. But the only thing I would say to you is self-knowledge, which means be honest with yourself. Don't put down the right answer, put down the truth. And because guess what? It's for you. It's for you. It's not for anybody else, and nobody's looking over your shoulder. Just do it for yourself. Be really honest and put it in. You know, and if you're an A-type, you might be upset that you didn't get the top score, but it will give you the revelation about maybe what you need to look at. I didn't get 100. I was very upset about that. But it was like, okay, this is good. I mean, because you've got to be really honest. I think it's a very simple way to evaluate yourself. Like you said, it's the numbers are there. You can look at it, and it's very simple.
Well, you know, as you work with many organizations, the key when you're an outsider with the experience you have, with some of the experience I have, the key is to ask the right questions. You can't walk in and advise anybody. They're going to know their business. They're going to know their situation better than you. But your gifts, my gifts are much the same in that we try to ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
And that might allow someone to go into, you know, I hadn't thought about that maybe in a while, because many times I view my role as reminding people of things they know, but perhaps have forgotten. Or can find a different way to integrate, because there's so much information out there. There's so much, and that's why I work so hard to try and provide something that was simple. You know, there's an endless supply of leadership information out there, just endless.
You're drowning.
I think, and I've read your book, and I know mine. What you and I have tried to do is to focus not on the supply side, but how can people apply it? There's a difference. People who are suppliers and people who can help you apply it. And I think there's a much shorter list of places to go that can help you in a simple way apply even broadly understood ideas to make a difference with your business. And that's what I think you and I both do.
Yeah, and I think you do that very well in the book, and I think it's an important piece for us all to get. And I think that people often get to a place of going, well, I don't know what to apply, meaning, as you said, because they're swimming in this ocean of information. We used to say content is king, and now I say content is the thing you're drowning in. You don't need, content is not king. Application is king. That's what real is.
As well as the simple, like, where do I start? I've got a section in the book. Where do I start? All this stuff is great, but okay, now I do want, what is the A, B, C of how to get started?
Yes.
We talk about that in the book. And by the way, we have case studies that go from startup to multinational, right? And everything in between. So some of these things just flat work. And you don't have to make it, big, thing. Just simplify it, focus on what works, measure it, and stay persistent and disciplined, and you'll make progress.
Now, one of the things that you and I talk about is about teams and about leading teams and how to make teams work and bond teams and all those kinds of things. And I really want to put it to you in the context of what you wrote. What choices can we as leaders, as chiefs, make to build more powerful teams, to have those teams really own that power? Because one of the things I just want to address an illusion that I say with leaders, and the illusion is, but this probably better than most. Back in the 90s, we had this idea of the open door policy, and I say to leaders all the time, you can take the door off the frickin' frame. It doesn't mean anybody's coming through. There's a barrier there, and so you better get outside of that door, because you can take it off. It won't make any difference. People are not coming in because of that hierarchy of power. Right. So what can we do to build more powerful teams?
Well, so again, power is absolutely a choice for people who are on the front lines. But now you're asking, okay, I'm above the front line. I may have a sales team. I may have a branch. I may have a division. I may have a whole company, right? I've got choices that I can make that somebody on the front line maybe can't make. What can I do to increase the probability that they will step up to bring their A game? And it's a great question. And frankly, I think there's a bunch of stuff we can do. And it starts honestly with selection, right? So when you have an opportunity to add to the team, right? And Jim Collins wrote a great book, Good to Great. And his number one rule is it's who first, what second, right?
Yeah.
Jim's right?
Absolutely.
Taking a look at when you have an opportunity to add to the team, really, really important. Really, really important. Now, when I walk in as a turnaround individual, more often than not, I'm brought in to assess. I'm generally brought in when things are going pretty badly. That's when I get called.
Things are on the downturn.
That's when I get called. And one of the things I'd offer your listeners has been really, really helpful to me is a simple tool I use called the GO test. Really simple.
Go?
The GO test.
Yep.
And in employing the GO test, I take a look at a group of people that I'm now working with, and I see they fall into one of three buckets. They're either go-goes, go-buts, or no-goes. So what do you do with those three? The go-goes are 15 to 20% of your people who are leading the organization. You don't have to give them a lot of instruction. If you want to set a slightly new direction, they're off to the races, right? Normally what you have to figure out with those people, the question you ask them is, what obstacles can I remove for you, right? You know what you're doing. You're close to the customer. You understand what's going on, or you're great at your process that you're responsible for, whatever it is, manufacturing, operations, whatever. How can I remove obstacles so you can do what you've always wanted to do and do it faster? That's the go-goes. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, the no-goes.
No-goes.
The no-goes. The no-goes are generally wonderful people, but they have no intention of going where you want to go. They may think they're going to outlast you. They may think, you know what, I've only got a couple of years left till retirement, and I don't care what you're doing. I've got my thing. You know, I'm going to outlast you. You're not going to last. And I've been here for 20 years, 30 years. You know, or I'm just not aligned with your vision. And the challenge there is, the quicker you can identify those people, Dov, it's better off, because you need to help them move out of your organization, maybe to another part of the organization, or maybe they need to leave the company. The challenge that leaders have is they'll waste time with no-goes because they're never going. Never, right?
Right.
So save your time there. The critical group, now by the way, that's sometimes 10% of your people. The critical group is the go-buts. This is where you want to spend your time. The go-buts, they want to go where you want to take them, but they just want to understand the compensation plan one more time, right? They'll go when the strategy and the compensation plan align. Perhaps they don't, right? Sally will go when Joe goes, right? So there's a little bit of, you have to figure out by individual, what's it going to take for them to jump on board? So when you understand where people are coming from, you can support them by removing obstacles, helping them find a new job, or finding out what they need to fully engage, right? We talked about 85% of the people around the world aren't engaged. It's because leaders are not spending time, whether they have a door on their office or not, to your point, going out and talking to people. I see that you're doing these things right, but I sense that there's something that's missing for you. What is it, and how can I help you get it, right? Whether it's recognition, compensation, communication, maybe we're not communicating as clear. So that simple go test, I got to tell you, I've used it from startups to multinationals, and it just flat works. And I encourage people to keep it simple, to do what you said, take the door off the side there, get out there and talk to people. But the go test can be a simple way of saying, okay, who am I talking to? A no-go, a go-but, or a go-go? And then how would I choose to support them?
So can I push back on that a little bit? Because I think it's important, because we all know people are good. I believe that. But people are dishonest to their advantage. And what I mean by that is, you know, I was saying this to a CEO I've been mentoring now for about 10 years. And I said, here's the thing you keep forgetting. I said, and I had him and his two partners in the room. So I had three of them in the room. And I said, okay, who's the number one person answers to you? And he tells me. I said, who's the number one person answers to you? He tells me. Who's the number one person answers to you? He tells me. I said, now tell me the number one job of each of those people. So they all tell me the things. And I go, wrong. And they go, what do you mean? I said, I don't work inside your company, but I know you're wrong. And they go, what do you mean? I go, the number one job of each of those people is to make you happy. If you're not happy, they could be out of a job. They have families. They have, you know, so their job is to make you happy. Telling you the truth doesn't always make you happy. So you have to make the truth make you happy, even when it doesn't, so that you send that message. Because part of the challenge is, when we're asking these great questions, is we have to check, am I getting the truth, or am I getting the answer I want? And so this is one of the great skills we have to learn as leaders, is to not ask the question with the answer buried in it. We have to ask the question that seems so neutral that they go, I don't know here. Like, so, because they're going to say, you know, because a no-go is going to say, oh yeah, I'm really on board with this. But you actually have to ask the questions that will show, is there an alignment of values? You know, in my case, is there an alignment of purpose? Is it truly aligned, or is it just, well, we can polish that up a little bit. We can put some lipstick on the pig and say it's okay, but it's actually no, I actually don't care about this. I'm just waiting for retirement. So I think it's a really important piece.
No, and I don't think we're misaligned. I think, and by the way, I'm not saying it's easy to identify a no-go, because many times these people are very proficient at looking you great in the eye and saying, I'm right with you, when everything inside them is going like this, right?
Exactly.
So it takes some skill to say, you know what, I'm really behind what you say, Dov, and I know this new direction is something you're committed to. And then you watch and you listen to people around them. You can identify. People know who's rowing at the same stroke count, and they know who's passive aggressive, as long as you as a leader are talking to people, right? And by the way, then you get an incredible lift. We didn't talk about this. It's called addition by subtraction. When the organization, which knows what's going on, sees someone who they all know is passive aggressive and not rowing, and all of a sudden he or she is gone, the entire organization gets a lift, right?
Absolutely.
Here's another one that some people don't do and needs to happen more and more. How many organizations do you serve where demotion is part of what happens? We all know the Peter principle, right? We rise to our level of incompetence. Yep. But invariably, in all size organizations, we don't want Joe or Becky to feel badly because we thought a stretch assignment would be the right thing for them. They've done great at this level. They get the new job, but guess what? They can't do it. Now, we could have trained, we can't always know that. But how do we allow them to save face, to maybe come back down, right? But how many organizations don't do that? The answer is too many. So we have people.
I would say most, right?
Right. So my point is, we do a lot with demotions. In organizations that I work with, we say, listen, it doesn't make you a bad person, and you have to. You know, if only one person is ever demoted in an organization, you can understand that person would be, it'd be a real problem. But if they understand that human capital is going to flow across organization, across silos, they're going to move up, they're going to move down. It's the opportunity of the company to treat them well, to pay them at market, to do recognition, to do good communication, to have retention strategies where they're required, to put your people in the place where they can succeed. Yeah. And I would tell you that demotion, while it's not easy, much like identifying no-goes, but if it was easy, then everyone would be doing it. Sometimes you have to do the things that are hard.
But you just said something there that I think is really important, because if we look at the morale of an organization, which I'm blown away by how little value often a leader will put on that. But if you look at the value of the morale, and then we go, okay, so you got Charlie, who was really good as a salesperson, and you made Charlie the sales manager, and he sucks. He sucks. And every day Charlie goes home feeling demoralized and beat up because he just can't get it. And you go, okay, so we gave him the right training. We did all the things to coach him and help Charlie to be a great sales manager. But this is not his thing. You're killing his morale and giving him, like you said, setting him up for success. Like, Charlie, you know what? We realize that was our fault. It's not that you're bad as a sales manager. It's that you shone as a sales leader, in sales. Let's put you back in that position and give you the opportunity to grow that out the yin yang, rather than trying to put you into a place you don't fit, round peg, square hole. And now Charlie's like, yeah, I feel good about that. It's not a demotion. It's put into a position of where I'm supporting you being as successful as you can. And I think that you can leverage around people's egos with understanding that morale piece. Like, do you want to feel good every day when you go home? Yeah. Did you feel good when you were in sales? Yeah. Okay. Do you feel good as a sales manager? No. And then of course, asking the questions, did we give you everything you needed to succeed? No. Well, we want to now.
Right. And there are other levers, right? So we take this individual and move back to sales. But guess what? Maybe we make a big deal recognition-wise because we're going to establish a new sales mentorship program. So he's not responsible for doing performance management and the formal elements of being the leader, but he doesn't lose we all have egos, right? You have to protect people, right? So how with recognition, compensation. By the way, if you're a sales, in that particular example, the biggest income hit you can sometimes take is going from sales to sales management, right?
Oh yeah, so, it's like, damn, my sales, like I'm no longer making my commission. Right? I'm working 80 hours and I'm not making my commission. What's going on?
Right. So all you want to have this individual is to save face, and the organization will understand if you do this consistently. Say, you know what? We didn't set him up to fail. He thought, and we thought, this was something that made sense. You're not going to promote him and he's going to go reluctantly say, no, I don't really want it. No, we're going to force you to take that promotion. He was part of that too. So we thought this was going to work. He's a valuable part of our team. This wasn't the glove fit. We thought he was going to play in the U.S. We thought he was going to play shortstop. No, he's not going to play shortstop. He's going to play third base, a slightly different position. But is he still a valuable member of our baseball team? Absolutely. And he's cared for. And that's what people will notice.
Yeah, that's really great input. Now, like I said, you've done a lot of stuff. You've had an expensive career from, like nonprofits, startups, and multi-billion-dollar organizations. But leadership is growth, and none of us are too brilliant, but we're all brilliant with hindsight. What was something that you did for a long time that really was not good, but you might have thought it was good at the time of doing it?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that my dad had limitless elements of, and he gave some of it to his oldest son, was patience. And I would tell you that if I look back, and patience is a virtue, so it's always degree, but I think I was a little too patient in certain areas. I think I was trusting that things would fall together. And I think as I got a little older, a little wiser, I said, there's something that I use now, the term healthy impatience, right? And people who are impatient, they just, I'm still patient, but I think on the spectrum, I've become a little bit more impatient. And I still want to be kind with people, but there's a point at which, speed matters in the market today. From a business. Speed matters, by the way, in your personal situation. You can wait and wait and wait, and you don't have to have everything tomorrow. But maybe you don't want to wait till next quarter to make a change, right? Maybe the change ought to be made in the next 2 weeks, right? So we talk about speed as an element, and yes, you need to do your homework. And maybe in the past, I would be looking for more data to support a decision. And now maybe instead of getting 90% of the data, I satisfy myself with 75% of the data and a gut call, because with experience, you can trust your gut a little bit better.
Of course.
But if I had it to do over again, Dov, honestly, I probably would have made some moves a little more quickly. And I think that healthy impatience is not a bad label for me.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor. I always say that I think that the Judeo-Christian idea of tolerance is a lovely idea, but it's actually it's psychologically unhealthy thing. I want to be intolerant of that which is unhealthy. I want to be intolerant of that which is destructive. I want to be intolerant of those kinds of things. I certainly know whether I need to have tolerance, but it's again that healthy intolerance of, you are really destroying morale. You gotta go. You're being a diva, and we've given you the opportunity to play on the team, and you want to still play diva. You gotta go. And I'm not going to be tolerant around those kinds of things. So it's very much on the same bent, and I love that. Thank you for that.
No, and I will follow up with something pretty important too. And now I've seen so many people that I'm working with now, and it's all about fast and go, and So Daniel Kahneman wrote a wonderful book that I'd recommend everyone to take a look at, a Nobel laureate economist, called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yes.
For those that have not had the opportunity to take a look at that one, I put that, it's right over my shoulder. I reference it regularly. And I've got a lot of clients who will say, you know what, yeah, but we got to go. And there are times to go quickly. But with certain elements, you've got to understand that, the whole discussion of heuristics and the human brain, we are human beings. We think we're logical when in fact science would say we're not. So we have to understand our own limitations. There is a time when it makes sense to slow down.
Yes.
Speed doesn't always make the right, make you feel good. It could be absolutely the wrong decision. So when you run large organizations, I have, or even when you run small ones, what you want to do is increase the probability of your success. So I just would add that to my my night table reading, and maybe think about how we make decisions, and maybe be better informed as we do.
Well, again, further onto that vein a little bit is this, as I said, leadership is growth, it's development, it's changing. And as leaders, particularly conscious leaders, I think that the leaders I have met who are exceptional are leaders who are committed to their growth. As successful as you are, what's one thing that you're still working on in yourself? What's something that you sort of go, you know what, I need to be better with that, or I need to get clarity or better, you know, deeper insight with this?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, it's just going deeper. You said exactly the right word, insight. I've been a meditator for maybe 8 years now, and I enjoy meditation. I find that trying to develop that voice is something that's constantly learning. I'm currently evaluating a 1-week silent retreat. So I'm playing around with the edges of how can I go deeper.
Right.
And I've got, like you, I've got a schedule that just is crazy.
Sure.
And I value the half hour, the 45 minutes. Sometimes I'll actually take an hour on a weekend and just do a solid 1 hour meditation, and the benefits are huge. But personally, I'm looking to push the envelope in yet another area and see what kind of benefits might come. Now I've got to look at my schedule like you and say, okay, when is there a week that'll actually make some sense? But I think that area of does my compass become more powerful if I develop a stronger sense of self? And fantastic. I think it does. The challenge is finding the time. Yeah,
and the truth of the matter is, and again, you know this better than almost anybody I can think of, is there never will be time. Right. I mean, there's never going to be time unless you make time. So, you know, I mean, when I was first presented with the idea of having a podcast, I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't have time for that. 10 years later, here I am.
That's right.
But you're absolutely right. And by the way, I've done Vipassana for 5 days, for a week, and for 10 days. And the 10-day silent retreats are just amazing. I've done many of them over the years, and they're very powerful. And when you finish feeling like you're going insane, then you get to this wonderful clarity. But for a while, it's like, what's going on? Yeah, I love it.
I've been pushing myself physically. You know, you get the physical, emotional, spiritual ground that we're all on. So physically, I've gone through a phase where I've been working pretty hard physically recently and seen some benefits. So it's now time to push myself in another area. And I'm not sure a push and meditation goes in the same.
Well, pushing the limits of
exploration. Yeah, I think that's really good.
So as we come towards the end of the show, sort of 3 last sort of quick fire questions are, number 1, what brings you joy, Rick?
My family. My family brings me incredible joy. I've got just a wonderful family, and the more time I spend with them as we get to the holiday seasons, I tend to light up around this time of year. Not unique to me, but family, nothing more important.
Beautiful. What's a guilty pleasure for Rick Miller?
Well, I would tell you that as a type 1 diabetic, I normally stay away from sweets.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, every once in a while, if I get a really good dark chocolate, it's actually worth a little insulin. So I mean, that's
keep it on hand, baby.
You know, that's where the exercise comes in. It's got to be balanced.
Exactly. And as we come to the end of the show, you know, one of the things I really like you to do, I mean, obviously, we want to recommend that people go to bechief.com and do that way of measuring yourself. But what's one piece of practical advice outside of that you would like our listeners, our viewers, to go do, that they could really sort of take what it is you've been talking about today and put it in action in the preferably next 24 hours, but certainly next few working days?
Well, I've got one I want to give you, but sure. I'm not sure that, and I'm not sure it's the next 24 hours, but I'll give it to you because it's had such a big impact on
Okay,
people.
Beautiful.
And the focus is on what I call the quiet chiefs. And in any organization, 50% of the people, plus or minus, are introverts. So I've seen so many organizations benefit from a little trick. And here's the trick. You want to pull your team together and you want to get involved in some brainstorming. Everybody does it. We get people together and, you know, we'll whiteboard some things and we'll get the energy up. And with the best of intentions, by the way, it's the extrovert that normally sets up these sessions with the best of intentions. Sure. So the little tip is this. The next time you want to have one of those sessions, before you have it, the night before, send an email out to all participants and share what your objectives are of the session and encourage them to write emails to you, right, about their ideas about what you're going to brainstorm on the next day. I've done this and I've seen such benefits because the introverts will love the fact that they will, some of them were up all night, by the way, last time I did this.
Sure.
Some of the best thinking that we ever could have gotten. They would never have raised their hand. They never would have, in a public audience, offered that. But I just want to remind our audience, for those people who have titles, and some do, some don't, create environments where the other 50% can bring their A game, right? And I focus on, I build on some of the great work. Susan Cain has written a wonderful book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts. But in any organization, 30, 40, 50% can be that way. And so the tricks of just creating environments where they can bring their best lifts everybody. So I'm not sure you can do that next 24 hours, but it's a tip that just brings results time and time again. That is
really good. And again, it's simple, and as a great author once said, it's the elusive obvious. It's one of those things that is like, yeah, of course we should think of that, but we don't. And you're right. I mean, you get a bunch of A-type extroverts in the room, and the introvert who is brilliant never gets to say anything. So that is powerful. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Listen, I have loved having you on the show. This has been great. I hope you've enjoyed it too. I really appreciate everything you've shared. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you, about the books, and all the wonderful resources that you have.
Thanks, Doug. The easiest place is to go to the book page at bechief.com. There you can download a free copy, a free chapter of the book. You can learn about the nonprofit area, the wonderful kids that all the money's going to. You can see some of the broad set of endorsements that's there. You get a link to take the quiz. You can learn about what we're doing. It's bechief.com. You can link with me, begin a conversation. And by the way, remember, all money from the book is going to special needs kids. And again, if the book doesn't snap your bean, just take the quiz and be more powerful. Help more people.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Well, again, thank you, Rick. It's been a real pleasure and a real honor. Thank you, sir. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And I want to say to you, dear listener, as always, don't just listen to the show. Put it in action. You hear me say it every time. Information, well, that's worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from application. Put it into action. There's a lot of gems in here, and I really recommend that you listen back and take some notes and see what it is that you can do right now. And remember, you can chat about this episode or any of the past episodes by going to our Facebook community. Just look for Dov Baron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you are sick of investing in training and developing of your talent, only to have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and to keep you there. Why? Well, because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. Matrix, you don't need a W, just matrix like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix assessment tool. Self-assessment tool shows you about the 5 areas of leadership. It's valued at $197. It's absolutely free to you. Get over there. Remember, you can play us on Google Home and on Alexa by simply saying play Dov Baron Podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Until next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can be better from the position you're in, that you can still be a chief even if you don't have a title. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.